What up, everybody? Sodomike here with another New World video. There's been a crazy amount of backlash, I'll call it, with New World's in-game cash shop leak that came from the Alpha NDA patch notes that came out, and then, of course, an announcement from the studio talking about what they actually meant, trying to clarify some stuff, and then even more outrage followed on that. So we are going to get into the full story, but in this video, I actually want to kind of go through my thoughts first on monetization of gaming in general, throughout kind of a history of gaming, and kind of where I'm at with that. Talk about microtransactions specifically, and I want to talk about some details on that. And then we're going to talk about the actual what happened with New World here because it's pretty crazy. And I can't believe the outrage. I mean, I was scared at first too, but we'll get to that in a minute. So why don't we dive in? All right, so let's talk about the history of gaming. Back in the day, your first computer, if you're old enough for this, you got a prepackaged box game. You went to the computer store. There was a box. It had some pictures of the game. It had a description of what the game was about. You bought it. You took it home. You installed it. Some of them were fucking DOS using XMS and EMS memory, if you're old enough to even know what that is. If you're old like me, good job. But you got a box game and you download it, you put it in. You didn't get any updates. Very rarely was there an expansion or anything like that. There was nothing online to download. You know, you got what you got, right? You liked the game, you didn't, you moved on, right? Then came the first generation of MMORPG. Okay, this happened with the internet. This happened with uh, a new game design. I have no idea where this idea came from, to be honest with you. But the EverQuest, the Asheron's Calls, the first generation MMO was a pre-packaged game just like before, except now it had a monthly subscription. Okay, so this was a new way of monetizing games, monthly subscription, and they made a goddamn fortune on it. And there was one problem though, right? Because I ran into this myself. A lot of people didn't have credit cards because people playing video games were kids, right? Back then, the priority, like the main majority of people playing video games were people who didn't own credit cards, right? So you have this issue where you have a monthly subscription fee which is charged to a credit card. A bunch of people wanting to play your game who didn't have a credit card couldn't play it. So World of Warcraft, got around this with their Game Pass and their cards that you could buy at 7-Eleven or whatever the fuck, so that kids could actually put money into your game and pay your monthly subscription. There's other games that said, if you play enough, you can use in-game coins for that, those kinds of things, so you don't actually have to pay a monthly subscription, whatever. But games got away from this. Even the MMO genre has gotten away from the monthly subscription, and they've gone into, you know, the either prepackaged. They went back to the prepackaged fees, where they'll try to sell you like their game, and then they'll get more money out of you by selling you a collector's edition. Name one collector's edition that was worth it. I can't. It was a waste of goddamn time. Usually, like, oh, here's all these in-game items that are gonna give you, a little advantage at the beginning of the game that lasts like 2 levels, or totally garbage. Or like, here's a T-shirt that you can wear to advertise for us for free. Every collector's edition I've ever looked at ever is garbage, complete shit. It was. I don't know how many people are buying these things. They're usually like 50% more than just the base game, and I've never seen one that was, worth it at all. I bought a couple myself. I bought the Warhammer one. That game fucking sucked. Never mind the collector's edition. I regret that purchase for sure. Collector's editions, garbage. So you don't even see that all the time anymore because nobody's buying these things. Then you have the expansion. So you have a game that you released, you're promising an expansion, and the expansion is going to be worth it. Apparently, it's going to be like a ton more content that, the developers have made and need you to buy again. So two problems I have with expansions is, number one, don't make your expansion the same price as the game. Right? Are you providing as much content as the game? No. So you're not going to provide an expansion that costs the same as the original purchase. It just doesn't make sense, right? And number two is, make sure your expansion feels like an expansion. It needs to have enough in it that it adds enough to the game that you're actually going to be like, oh yeah, this is totally worth it, tons of content. There's a bunch of examples of gaming companies that put out new content every 3-4 months for free or less every month. They're constantly updating their game. making it better and like not charging you anything. So if you're going to charge for an expansion, it better be good, right? It better be enough content to make it worthwhile, right? So then we finally get into this microtransaction shop. So now you have something that players can buy in the game that augments their gaming experience some way or the other. Makes them look different. It does certain things. And here's where we get into the pay to win conversation, right? Now, before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about uh, my experience with an old game called Asheron's Call and go through some numbers there, okay? So the first game, Asheron's Call, the box itself was $40, okay? And it had $9.95 per month. This is all US dollars, by the way. 99 per month subscription fee, right? Then it had one expansion called Dark Majesty, which they charged $19.95 for, okay? Half the price of the game. Both the game and the expansion, by the way, came with a free week of subscription, or free month rather, not free week. So you're getting your $10 back. So the expansion costs you $20 and it's worth 10 immediately. So it only actually costs you $10 if you take that out of there. All right. So now here's a game that had a ton of content. Like this game took years for people to get to max level. Remember those days where people weren't getting max level in a week? Yeah, it happened. People actually just enjoyed playing the game. It wasn't about getting to max level. At the end of the day, the point is, you know, rushing to max level to enjoy a game is a shortcut. It's stupid. Don't know why gaming industries do it anymore. But it also leads to some of the monetization, which is the whole point of this topic, and the strategies that they employ. Now, we talked about a bunch. We talked about the box, just buying the box. We talked about collector's edition, which is a more expensive box. We talked about expansions. We talked about monthly subs, and we talked about microtransactions. There's obviously hybrids of all of these. My personal favorite, the one that I like, is the monthly subscription. Why? Because number one, you're not asking me to pay a bunch up front, and then I buy a game called Fallout 76 for $80. That makes me want to cut myself. And then you have other games where they're fully microtransaction based, and you know they've crossed the line where now they're getting you to, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. They're getting you to pay for things that they shouldn't make you pay for. So I don't like that. But the main reason why I like monthly subscriptions is I am as a player, I'm going to be paying you for as long as your game is entertaining me. The number one problem, in my opinion, with games today is that, other than the fact that they get released unfinished, which is systemic, but the number one issue that I think is that there just isn't enough content. We got distracted by lore, and no offense, I know everybody loves lore, but it's not the reason we play the game primarily, right? You want to immerse yourself for 5 minutes? No. If you had a nice long game, that lore complements that. I 100% agree with that. But if you're replacing content in the place of lore, Anthem, a perfect example, probably hands down my favorite combat system ever created. Nothing even comes close in this game. It could have been the best game I have ever played in my life, and I'd probably still be playing it. But I finished that entire game and all of its content, despite trying to like redo things constantly, in under a month. Right? So you're gonna prepackage a game and sell me a box version. I'm gonna buy it and I'm gonna get what I get, and I have no idea. Uh, versus me paying you a monthly subscription. Number one, you're gonna keep making money the longer you hold my attention, which is good for you, and it's also good for me because now I know that you're not just gonna package this game up and drop it like the Blizzard model, right? Where they sell a bunch of boxes and they throw a server up and they never patch or change it or fix it or upgrade or anything. They just move on to their next game, right? Because they don't think there's diminishing returns or whatever. But as a player, that I don't trust you because you're selling me a box game and I don't know what I'm getting. And once I've purchased it, I have no power to get what I want out of it, which is just a fun game, right? There's so many games now that are sold unfinished, and there's not enough to do. And this is the solution here is a monthly subscription of some kind, where I'm only going to pay you, you know, as you entertain me, as you keep my entertainment, and I like that. I think that works for both parties, right? People argue that microtransactions do the same thing. Not necessarily. You got a bunch of people who love the game, will play it forever and ever and ever, and will never give you a cent. There's other people who will buy all your microtransactions even though they're not going to play, that long at all. and then there's everybody in between. And actually, on microtransactions, this is a subject that I want to get into right now. Is my number one problem with microtransactions is, when do they not, when do they stop being micro? You know, you look at a game like, let's go take a look at this. You go look at a game like Grinding Gear Games Path of Exile, right? And you know, ever since Tencent bought a majority share in Grinding Gear Games, this would happen in their microtransaction shop. So here on the right, this is a dungeon crawler, by the way. If you don't know what it is, check it out. It's a fun game. They call these microtransactions. These are deals. Deal of the day, 26% off. You get some wings, right? 470 points. Well, you probably don't know what that means, but let me tell you. 10 points is $1, which means this deal, by the way, this sale that they're talking about here, $47 American for fucking wings. Okay? Look at this. Deal of the day, armor set, $31. Go on Steam and look at how many games, entire games you can buy for $31. They want to sell you a goddamn armor set for $31? It's just greed. That's all it is. They've come and they just put their hand in your pocket and they're just greedy. That's all it is. The gaming industry is being impacted by greed. Microtransaction? You gotta be fucking kidding me, micro. Look at this. Let's go do it. Let's go do it. Merriam-Webster, micro, the definition, very small, involving minute quantities. Okay? I don't know what you guys are buying on a regular basis. For me, gas, food, parking, a movie ticket to the movie theater or whatever. What are these, like $20 transactions, $30 transactions? If it's a micro transaction, that's a buck or two, 10% micro. $47 for wings. Okay? You can't call it a microtransaction. It's a transaction, or even like a large transaction. You're calling it microtransaction? Ah, it's greed. It's just greed, 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 greed. So whenever someone like Amazon says, "Hey, we're going to put a microtransaction shop in," my first question is, "Oh yeah, what are the prices?" Right? You look at cell phone industry. You want to talk about pay to win? Cell phone gaming industry. Every transaction on these things are like a buck or two. You know, this industry makes billions of dollars per year selling things at a dollar or two. But at least it's a fucking microtransaction. If you want to give them a couple of bucks to like buy some stuff and support the game, I'm okay with that. But these things don't. It's like goddamn rent. It starts high and it just goes higher and higher and higher and higher. You're paying $60 for goddamn mount or whatever. I mean, if you're paying $40 for a game that gives you a ton of content, things to do, and it's like immersive and takes years and years to build, and then they ask you to spend half of that on a goddamn microtransaction, it's not a microtransaction. Okay? This is microtransaction problem numero uno. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. Okay? There's other issues with microtransactions. The most obvious one is the pay to win impacts. So obviously, cell phone industry. If anyone's ever played a cell phone game, they're like, "Here's a fun game that we want you to like, but we're only gonna let you play it 10 times unless you pay us. Or if you actually want to have a chance, you need to give us money." This industry is completely pay to win, 100%. I've played a lot of cell phone games. I like them, but they're all just money walls. They just want whales to come and fund them for making a fun game. And those games aren't even, I mean, they're limited by the phone, right? Like they're not that good, right? They're very basic most of the time. Not really my thing. I like something that's a little more advanced. It's like going to the casino. You can pull a slot machine, kind of boring, or you can play something with some strategy in it, or a little more to it. That's my thing. I like the more in-depth thing. Same thing with any kind of entertainment, personally. Um, but as far as gaming goes, everybody has their own definition of pay to win, and there's all kinds of different games that have microtransaction shops. I play a strategy game occasionally called Starborn, and that game if you're going to sell a microtransaction, there's almost no cosmetic or non-impactful things you can sell. There's some, sure, but most of these things are going to give you some kind of an advantage. It's a strategy game. And yeah, there's some stuff that's definitely pay to win in there, and every single player who's interested in a game has to decide whether or not they're into that or not, whether or not A, they want to spend any money, and B, if they want to support a game that does that kind of stuff, because it has been kind of a systemic problem, right? So now I'm watching, the New World story, which we're going to get to next, and I'm looking at this, and my personal view of this is MTX is probably not something that's going away. I think a lot of people just hate it altogether and want it all gone and whatever. Like you kind of have to wake up. This is capitalistic, right? Like this is people like making games and playing games and it's all fun and stuff. But somebody's making money on this, just like anything, right? You can love making cars, but you're not going to give it to someone for free. So they're going to monetize it some way, and MTX is another way they do that. It's a way that makes them a ton of money. I don't see anybody getting away from this just because we don't like it sometimes as the consumer. But the pay to win line is definitely drawn for every single person differently, and this is what I've seen from some of the feedback even after the response from Amazon Game Studios, of people just being outraged. So I don't want to give too much away. Like I said, we're getting to it next. But for me personally, like a cosmetic microtransaction, something that just makes you look cool, that doesn't give you an advantage over me. I completely understand people's opinions where they're saying, back in the day, like people would look cool and you'd ask them like, how'd you get that? And you can only get that stuff by doing the in-game content, being really hardcore and stuff. And it entices people to be like, hey, I want that stuff. And so if somebody goes and earns something, the argument is that if somebody went and earned it and you can just pull out your wallet and buy it, it disadvantages them in the fact that they earned it and you didn't, right? And I don't know about you guys, but that's life. I mean, that's just the way it is, and it's something that, you know, I don't love it, right? But I accept it, right? And I see the outrage over it, and I'm like, you know what? If it's just cosmetic in nature, then I'm willing to compromise. Because where I'm not willing to compromise is when it gives someone an actual advantage over me. That's where I'm not willing to compromise. So I see both sides of this. But again, even in that sentence, people have different ideas of whether it's an advantage or not. I think looking cool is not is not an advantage. Let's be honest. Come on, people. It's not an advantage, right? It does for sure reduce the value that comes from earning something. I am on board with you there, but it doesn't give someone an advantage over you. It may diminish some of the value you derive from playing your game a lot, right? Particularly if they're buying the exact thing that you can earn. Like, is there not a happy medium here? Can we not have a gaming studio that sells cosmetic things so that people can look cool, but still have things that it can only be earned that maybe look better? I know that's subjective, but something that that you think looks cool, a bunch of things that can only be earned throughout playing the game. Like that's a nice, easy medium, I think, for the most part, right? At the end of the day, like you still want to support a game that gives you something enjoyable, right? So this is why I'm not 100% opposed to microtransactions like most people are. One thing that I think that we are all on the same page of is the quality of life stuff. Because the argument ends here. It's very simple, right? I've heard people say this like create the problem, sell the solution, right? This is the worst part about capitalism. You're purposely making something worse and then selling somebody the solution to make it better. Like when your mechanic does that to you, you want to murder them, right? Like you're like, don't fix this and loosen that, right? Like this is the bad mechanic idea, right? Like it would be like a doctor making you sick and then providing you the cure, right? Like this is it's an extreme example, but that's what's happening here, right? Like gaming companies purposely making things unplayable. That I was just talking about Path of Exile. You start that game, you get like 5 stash tabs or 3 stash tabs or something. It it's not enough to play the game and to enjoy the game from start to finish. You cannot argue with me that that is enough. You can't interact with their market economy without having a premium stash tab in that game, which you don't get for free. It's just not enough space to do even just like the base amount of things. And you're telling me that that's enough, and any extra tabs and quality tabs and stuff like that are just quality of life? No, no, absolutely not. Quality of life microtransactions are crossing the line 100% for me. 100%. You should never make your game suck so that you can sell something that makes it not suck. Like you've put the forethought into this, you understand what a player wants, give the player what they want. That makes you a good company. Don't sell them what they want, give them what they want. You know? A quality of life thing that costs you money. This is something that after your game is released and you get a bunch of feedback from that's hugely expensive for some reason, throw an expansion pack. Right? That's a perfect expansion pack item. We've given you content, and also here are 10 quality of life things that we didn't think of and didn't know and didn't realize that we're now giving you. And it's part of the expansion. That's great. But to determine that quality of life is a microtransaction that you need to nickel and dime people for, no, not on board with that at all. Not on board with that at all. Right? Now, why don't we dive into the New World piece? What happened with New World specifically? Because there's some more topics here that I want to cover, and this does kind of factor into it. So here is a portion of the alpha leak that happened. So basically what happened was New World has some alpha players that are still under NDA. Here's something that got leaked from that. It wasn't meant to get leaked. They should have known it was going to get leaked, but they didn't think it through. And so basically what it says is, New World's introducing this cash shop. The second line is what really matters here. We will sell cosmetics in the form of item skins, dyes, company crests, and emotes. Okay. We may sell quality of life items or boosts that will help players improve their time spent leveling up their character and trade skill experience. So introduce outrage, right? This I was pissed at this. I'm not gonna lie to you. And everybody was pissed at this because your game hasn't even released yet and you're talking about selling absolute not there's no ambiguity here. This is pay to win. You're going to sell somebody level progression and trade skill progression, like economic impact stuff. If somebody pays you, they're going to have an advantage over this. Everyone was pissed. Of course they were pissed, right? You get hyped for a game and then you find out that all they care about is the money, right? And that's how this came off. And I didn't see anybody supporting this at all. I don't know how you would. Anybody who actually is real wouldn't support this, and I didn't see anybody doing that. So this is the backstory of where the outrage came from, right? And you can see why, because they're essentially ruining the game. They're just coming up in front and say like, we spent all this time making this game, and when it releases, whoever pays us the money is going to be reaping all the rewards of it, and the rest of you, too bad, right? So that's how this read. Okay, so then New World comes out and releases the next day here from Rich. They put this out, and had they known the alpha patch notes was going to get leaked, I'm sure they would have had something like this in them instead of what they had in just basic patch notes, right? Because it's under NDA and they're like, oh well, whatever. Um, our alpha testers will understand or whatever their plan was. But of course, the community doesn't understand, so you have to release something like this. And what I want to draw your attention to is the first line of paragraph 2. All Star items launch will be exclusively cosmetic in nature. There's no ambiguity there. I like that. So it's only going to be cosmetics. Again, I understand a lot of people don't like that anyway. I'm okay with it. I've made my peace with this. I think, I think this is okay in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that it's world-ending stuff. Like I see a lot of people saying that any microtransaction, including cosmetic ones, are a problem. I disagree with that. Um, just because I'm taking a realistic view of it. If the world's our oyster and we can do whatever the fuck we want and nothing's based in logic or economics or whatever, yeah, hell yeah, screw MTX. But let's be real here. Like I said, this is, you know, it's going to be monetized. Just live with it, right? And this is something that I can make my peace with. So then it goes on to talk about how, in paragraph 3 here, looking towards the future, we will also test ideas on how to offer players quality of life items like rest XP, fast travel. Okay, so this people have huge issues with as well because they're saying this is a competitive advantage for players. And my thing on this is, if it's not coming out day one and it's something that happens in the future, the rest XP thing, I don't love it. I will never use it, but I see where they're coming from. Um, I see both sides of this argument. If you have a friend who you're trying to get involved in this game and they're not interested in playing the game by themselves and they want to play with you, helping them catch up to you for that reason only, I get it. Technically, it's good for the community to have more people in the game in general. And if that's what it takes to get people, keep people in the game and entertained, I'm fine with it because at that point it doesn't provide any advantage for them over anybody else. You know, if you're sitting there like, oh well, I want to speed through this stuff to get to the end, you have a choice. You can either play through the content like everybody else who will be at the beginning of the game, which by the way, the content is great. I played it. It's fun. There's I hear a lot of arguments saying like they've made it super slow and grindy and you have to pay this to get to the end. I disagree with that. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is honestly for considerations for, hey, you want to level a second character, or you want your friend to come and they're not interested in going through all the questing and stuff and they just want to play with you for a bit. I don't think it's the end of the world, to be honest with you. Where they reneged on from the alpha nodes, you may notice. Let's go and look at this. Character and trade skill experience. So they removed trade skill. That's the hill that I would have died on. Don't impact the economy with paywalls. No. So they reneged on that. You can read this whole thing if you want. There's nothing in here about trade skills. That's where I put my foot down. And I know other streamers will be like, oh well, you're foot in the door, right? Like you let them have an inch, they'll take a mile. Um, I I disagree. I don't think that people are that ignorant that just because I'm saying that a cosmetic MTX is okay, that they will assume that I'm okay with, you know, an economic impacting MTX. You know, grinding gear games for all their greed and stupidity and whatever, they never went there. They've had a microtransaction shop since day one. I've been playing that game for over a decade, and they never added pay to win. They never crossed the line. So I have to believe that, just because I'm allowing, like I have any say in it really, them to have a microtransaction of one kind means that I'm okay with the other kind. I disagree with that, and I don't just see it progressively getting worse. I don't. I think it's a serious topic that a lot of people have concerns with, and I don't think that they push the envelope here very much, to be perfectly honest with you. So they totally reneged on the economic impact. I'm okay on that as well. Fast travel stuff, I don't know the details of that. I don't know if I like that or not. It would depend on whether or not I consider it being a competitive advantage, or something that they should have just given to everybody. One of those quality of life things we talked about. I don't know. So that'll kind of depend, when it comes out to see the actual details of what it is. At the end of the day, the way I look at this is, what do we want from a game? And for me, it's enough content, enough enjoyment, you know, a, enough polish that I'm not falling through the world for no reason or dying or getting stuck or whatever. Attention to detail and that kind of stuff. Enough things to do. And in a game like this that you're talking about open world PvP and big wars and 20 versus 20 and 50 versus 50, 40 versus 40 or whatever it is, what kills this game is not having people in it. So if they want to make a buck while we're increasing something that helps the community, which is increasing the number of players, I'd be happy without any MTX, but this one at least makes sense to me because at the end of the day, it's not just about Amazon nickeling and diming and other gaming companies nickel diming their community necessarily. It could be actually a good thing for us. Like if you're actually going to be honest with it, if it's a fine line, a slippery slope, but if it's something that keeps the game going, both from financial side of things and also from just a number of players that are in the game. How many times like MMOs end up with like server merging and because they're trying to save a dying game because people joined and left, a month later, 3 months in or whatever. Like constantly getting more players into this game and promoting that is huge. Does this help that? I think it does. Having a gaming studio that actually appreciates their game, wants to expand on it, wants to advertise for it. Those kinds of things I like to support because I almost the worst thing other than having no good games to play is having a great game and not being able to play it because it's dead. There's nobody else wants to play it, right? So if having an XP MTX helps that, then I'm okay with it. Again, the fact that it doesn't come out when it's released and it's months later makes a big difference. If it happened day one, then I would not be okay with it because then you're just selling progression for money and you're enticing people with wallets open to have an advantage over everybody else. And that's not okay because that is pay to win 100%. So hopefully you can see the differentiation of what I'm saying with the XP stuff. But that being said, the one argument that I do not like from the gaming studio is helping people with not enough time. I'll never understand this. So you're playing an MMO, which is massive. It's right in the fucking title. Tons of stuff to do, lots of progression streams, um, and you want to rush through it. Like, why are you're picking the wrong game? If you don't have enough time to do it, then you're in the wrong game. There's plenty of short games, small games, whatever. Go play Roller Coaster Tycoon. That game still rocks, right? Like you don't have enough time. Are you no offense, are you terminally ill? Like time is there's you have lots of time, right? Hopefully, we all have lots of time. So just because you can't get through it all in a month, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If you can only play for an hour or two a week, man, you're gonna be able to play this game for a long time. That might factor in on what I was talking about earlier. If you have a monthly subscription or something, it's hugely expensive because you can't, you know, put your time in, for the money you're paying. But for a game like this, it's a box game. The servers aren't going down anytime soon. You can enjoy the game over 10 years if you want to. Like I don't understand this argument if people don't have enough time and they want to be rushed. Like play when you can. Enjoy it while you're there. Like this argument, someone will need to explain this argument to me because I don't understand it at all. This doesn't help people who don't have enough time. If I, being me, I take a week off to play this game and crush content in a week and I'll play every day. But if for some reason I couldn't, and I can only play a couple hours, a day for the first month or a week or whatever, or for the first year even, like I would enjoy it in the time that I'm playing it. And I don't understand the argument that just because I'm spending 40 hours in a week versus 40 hours in a year playing a game, I'm going to get less enjoyment out of those 40 hours. Doesn't make any sense. I'm going to play the exact same things. I'm just going to do it over a longer period of time, and I'm going to enjoy it just as much as I did, in a condensed play session. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's the stupidest fucking argument I've ever heard. So if somebody wants to enlighten me on why that needs to be addressed, please, leave a comment because I don't get it. Okay, so the last part here that I want to touch on is the future plans for transparency, the battle pass thing. Like kudos to Rich, man. Like people have like people have outrage at this stuff. They're being upfront about it. They're being upfront about the reasons. They're being upfront about what it is. They've come out and directly said it will only be cosmetic in nature, which doesn't it's not pay to win. I don't care what you say. Like it's not like deal with it. It's just not. We'll all deal with it together. And then he's talking about in the future the stuff he was going to do in the future, and then the battle pass thing. I like battle passes. I'll be honest with you. Um, it kind of twists your arm a little bit to support the game if you want to participate. You don't have to, but they're usually pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff in there that you want. But the main reason I like it is because it entices you to play the game. It's almost like the subscription thing that I was talking about. It's like an optional subscription. It gives you a reason to continue to play the game. Any game that I really like that's very repetitive, or any game that I really like in general, eventually you're just gonna kind of be like, do I really want to do that today, or should I do this? And then I got 10 other games I want to play. If you have a battle pass in there, it gives you some skin in the game. It's like watching sports and having a $2 bet on it. Like it just gives you that reason to be there, and it makes it more enjoyable, in my opinion. And you can disagree with that if you want. It's totally cool, but I don't have a problem with this. I don't have a problem with this either. So I'm probably the only person on YouTube who actually doesn't hate this stuff. Uh, but you know what, you guys, I look forward to all the dislikes on this video, so you guys can let me know. Um, I think Amazon's doing the right thing here by being upfront about it and clarifying their alpha notes, which they were raked over the coals for. Um, I think they're a new gaming studio. They should have known that anything they post is going to get leaked. They learned this one the hard way, but they responded to it and they were upfront about it. And quite frankly, I'm okay with their response. I think all of this stuff, if you take it, into consideration logically, I don't think it is the end of the world. I think we'll all survive. What Amazon has in mind for their microtransaction shop. They've announced that they're going to be doing expansions. They've announced that they're going to continue to contribute to the game. They put out a ton of content while they delayed it versus delaying it and doing nothing, or overhyping their game and making it crappy. Like this game was fun last August. I guarantee you it's going to be a good game, and they seem invested in it. And I don't have a problem with them monetizing it. That's just reality, right? You get what you pay for too sometimes, right? So like I'd be a little worried if they weren't monetizing it. An MMO for $40, that's pretty damn cheap. That's pretty damn cheap. Think about it. Think about all the $80 games you've bought. Cyberpunk, awful. What a waste. Twice as expensive as this. Some of the most fun I've ever had are from free games. So, you know, you got to think about this. Those free games, by the way, have MTX. So let's just be clarified. You do get what you pay for, though, in that, if I like those games, I'm going to support the games. I don't have a problem with that. I think everybody should. I do have a problem with the pay to win stuff and the cell phone industry in general and how they do their thing. I think it's greedy and there's a limit, right? Like we talked about earlier. But I like what I see so far, to be honest with you, and I'm okay with this. So, all right, that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. This content's a lot of fun to make, but it also takes a decent amount of time and effort. So I really do appreciate any follows, any likes. This one's a bit controversial, so I'm expecting a few dislikes too, and that's okay. But anyway, just wanted to say thanks, and continue to tune in. I hope I see all of you guys in New World, and don't forget to join me on my Twitch channel.